You ever walk away from a store feeling like you got an amazing deal, only to get home and think, wait, did I actually overpay? It happens, right? Well, it turns out our brains have these little shortcuts, these biases, that can be easily tricked. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most powerful ones out there, all through a little story about a hungry crocodile and a very clever fishmonger. Let's dive in and see how a simple trip to the market can show us a huge quirk of the human mind. All right, so let's set the scene for our story. It all starts with our hero, a fellow named Mr. Crocodile, and his goal is super simple. He just wants to grab a nice fish for his dinner. So, picture this. Mr. Crocodile's stomach is rumbling. He's hungry. The mission couldn't be clearer, right? Just pop out and buy one fish. What could go wrong? But instead of going to his usual spot, he decides, hey, let's check out that new fishmonger. A fishmonger who, by the way, is known for being a bit cunning. And this, right here, is where our simple story is about to get a whole lot more interesting.
So Crook wanders in and asks a totally normal question. Hey, how many shells for a good fish? I mean, he's a straightforward guy looking for a straightforward price. Simple.
But he doesn't get a straightforward answer. Oh no. Instead, the cunning fishmonger starts to set a brilliant little psychological trap, and it all starts with one big, powerful number. The fishmonger just smiles and pulls out this absolutely massive golden fish. And he says, this is a royal fish. For you, a special price, only 500 shells. Now that first number, 500, that is incredibly important. It's the anchor. And Crook's reaction is exactly what you'd think. 500 shells? His eyes practically pop out of his head. He's in shock. Is this guy kidding me? No way is he paying that. He rejects the offer flat out. Now the fishmonger sees this and he just calmly sets the giant fish aside. Then he picks up a much more normal-looking fish. Okay, he says. How about this delicious one? For you. Just 20 shells. And boom, that's where the trick lands. See, Crook's brain isn't really processing this new offer on its own. It's stuck on that first crazy number, 500. So when he hears 20, he's not thinking, is 20 a fair price? He's thinking, wow, what a deal, all the way down from 500 to 20. He happily buys the fish, feeling like he's the smartest shopper in town. But the reality? That fish was only worth 10 shells. He paid double and thought he got a bargain. He was completely taken for a ride, and he didn't even have a clue. So that leads to the really important question, why? Why does our brain work like this? Why does it get so easily hooked by that first bit of information? Well, this whole thing actually has a name. It's a cognitive bias known as the anchoring effect, and it's something that quietly influences all of us in our daily decisions, way beyond the fish market. To put it simply, our brain has this tendency to rely way too heavily on the first piece of information it gets. We call that the anchor. Once that anchor is set in our minds, we subconsciously compare everything that comes after to that initial point, instead of looking at it objectively. And this is exactly what the fishmonger did. It was a perfect two-step strategy. First, he threw out a completely ridiculous number, 500, to set a super high anchor in Crook's mind. Then, he presented his real offer of 20. And compared to that insane anchor, 20 didn't just seem reasonable. It seemed like a fantastic deal, even though it was actually an inflated price. Now, you might be thinking, this is just a fun little story, but this exact trap is set for us every single day out in the real world. It's a fundamental part of marketing, negotiations, pretty much everything. Seriously, think about it. You see a jacket with a price tag that says was 100, now 40. Your brain immediately anchors to the $100, which makes $40 seem like a total steal. Or in a salary negotiation, the very first number that gets mentioned often becomes the anchor for the entire rest of the conversation. Even restaurants do this. They'll put a wildly expensive dish right at the top of the menu just to make everything else below it seem way more affordable by comparison. This anchor is everywhere. So the big takeaway here is really just to become more aware of these invisible anchors. You know, the first step to not getting hooked like Mr. Crocodile is simply recognizing when an anchor is being dropped in the first place. And that kind of brings us to our final thought. Now that you know what to look for, just think about it for a second. Where has the anchoring effect popped up in your life? When was the last time a number got stuck in your head and totally influenced a decision you made? Because recognizing the anchor is the first step to thinking more clearly and making much, much smarter choices.